Wild dogs are a major threat to sheep producers in Australia's rangelands. In 2008, sheep producers in the North Flinders region of South Australia approached their local community-based NRM group for help. Located south of the dog fence in the sheep pastoral zone of the Arid Lands region, the problem had become a significant threat to their businesses.
Yeah, the program initially got up and running because of the dingo predation north of here. Being the chair of the North Flinders NRM group, I was receiving a few phone calls from landowners that were having issues with dingo predation, and we held 2 or 3 public meetings, and we were going nowhere. So as a group we sat down and thought, well, if we're going to tackle this problem, we need funds. So we sort of started searching for funds, making a few phone calls, and came up with the Sheep Industry Fund and a bit of extra money from AWI.
Having identified sources of financial support, the group then developed a funding proposal. They realised that any effective long-term solution would need to be owned and run by landholders, with measures implemented uniformly across the landscape. History had shown that individual efforts were simply not having an impact. Unless they worked in a coordinated method, landholders could not get a full picture of dog movements and predation. Dogs simply moved from property to property and escaped control measures.
It's important that it's run by landholders because we best know where the dogs are operating and what is required to tackle them.
The group developed a funding proposal for a landholder-run wild dog management program that divided the affected area, some 200,000 square kilometres, into 4 regions. The program would be rolled out in each region over successive years from 2009-10 to 2011-12. The proposal received funding approval, providing the much-needed resources to get Biteback up and running.
The Biteback Program is the program where we bring landholders together in small working groups where they work out how they can manage dogs as a collective group. We send out a letter for them to do an injection service, and one of the landholders from the group then rings around all the other landholders and encourages them to come to the injection service, and then they in general rock up on the day. Because it's being driven by the landholders and not by the government agency, there's more tendency for the landholders to be included. Now there are a lot of other different sort of landholders, so they might own the property to run tourism, they might be a mining company, they might be Aboriginal landholders that aren't necessarily running stock. So because they're not running stock, there's no real need for them, they don't see the need for them to control dogs, but the property owners that run stock still need their neighbours to help with that control. Prior to the Biteback project beginning, we had about 34 landholders participating in dingo control, and now we have up close to 100.
2008 I got a 3% lambing, and 2009 I actually got 20 dogs shot and baited and trapped. It was pretty hard to get the neighbours on board, because a lot of them had gone out of sheep, a lot of them have pretty well left the place, and then a lot of places have been sold either to national parks or gone to a Aboriginal group, and where they're not running sheep, they didn't sort of think that they probably needed to be controlling dogs, and it's just got out of hand. But we've sort of got a good little group here now, and I reckon we're starting to get on top of them a little bit, I think.
The success of the program lies in small landholder-run management groups deciding on how, when and what control measures need to roll out in their local area. They get together at someone's farm or around the back of the ute to map out stock losses, wild dog numbers and movements, and develop local area plans that cover their region regardless of property boundaries. The groups agree on things like when and where baiting should occur, how long the program should run, and possible future sources of funding. It's producer collaboration at its best.
Stock losses, dingo numbers are far less now than when the program first got up and running in 2009.
Having worked closely with landholders since the outset of the program, Heather Miller has seen the value of this landholder-driven approach to tackling a natural resource management issue.
It's not only landholders that need to change their practices, but the government agency needs to change theirs as well. So, for example, our aerial baiting policy, we needed to change our thoughts on that and have an understanding that the landholders needed that aerial baiting, or they wanted it. I think there are a lot of other areas in Australia that are already adopting this approach, but I think it is an area where it could be used for other pest problems or other projects where if there's funding for something, the organisations could go to the landholders and ask for their input into what the funding should be used for, and then apply for the funding and then run it in the way the landholders want it from their advice, that they have the input to begin with. So I think that's probably the biggest focus, not necessarily on dogs, it could be on any other pest, animals or plants or any project. Providing it's driven by the landholders, it'll have a greater chance of being successful.